Fubara knew Wiki, knows all his tendencies, and you allowed him to sponsor, quote and unquote, you. It's a bit, you should expect this kind of problem. Unfortunately, you will have to face the music. You will not go to Ohadiwa, Oshun, Sango to go and collect a child, and then you bring it to church, come and do Thanksgiving. That will be fraud.
It's another day and another trending issue shaking up the country. A young corps member in Lagos, frustrated by the rising cost of living, took to the TikTok social media app to pour out her grievances about the Tinubu administration. And in less than 24 hours, she was threatened by the NYSC board. Now, while some Nigerians are debating how she spoke and whether her words were too harsh, we want to go beyond the gossip to break down the deeper policy implications. We've seen this play out before, citizens speaking out and being silenced from the End Bad Governance protests to everyday Nigerians just trying to voice their realities. So I think the bigger question we should be asking is if this government that is meant to be a democratic government is becoming increasingly intolerant of criticism. Without a doubt, Tinubu's economic reforms have left us with some harsh realities to face, but could there actually be light at the end of the tunnel? Well, sit tight because I'll be taking you through that line of thought with my amazing guest, Taufik Olokodano, analyst and economist, Jeff Okoro-Afo, good governance advocate, and Adedoyin Adeleke, green growth expert and development expert. Thank you so much for joining the program. I'll start with you, Adedoyin. We have you on set. How are you doing today?
Fine, it's my pleasure being here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So first of all, I want to start with the major issue that we have on ground, and that was the video that was released from the young corps member. First of all, what I want to know is what were your thoughts when you first of all saw the video? And looking at the way she expressed herself, there was a lot of emotion in that video, and there's been a lot of comments on the way she put forward her grievances. But when you saw the video, what first of all came to your mind? I just want to know just a bit of your reaction on the video and the grievances she expressed in the video.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, we need to look at these things from different angles, from legal, from social angle, and also from regulatory angle. Now, if she wasn't a core member with NYSC, no issue about regulatory, we just look at legal and social. But because she's a core member, you know. But first, it's important to establish that the freedom of everyone is probably their biggest identity and the biggest property that you can have, and nobody should be stripped of that, irrespective of the government and the form of the party or whatever. However, so it now comes to how you express your grievance. What she has said are obvious truth, but maybe I would have passed the message better. The same message, but maybe I would have passed it better.
All right, thank you. And let me come to you, Jeff. Just a bit of your thoughts when you saw the video. How do you assess the way she brought forward her grievances on social media?
Well, I was excited, if I'm to say the truth. I was excited for once, being someone who has fought a lot for social accountability in Nigeria, being someone who has stood in front of security operatives, tear gassed in this country, handcuffed and taken to unknown destination just because I dared to fight for those who cannot voice out themselves. I can tell you that I was happy when I saw that particular video. It tells me that there are people who are ready to carry the torch and move on from where some of us stopped. Not that we have stopped advocating, but we want other Nigerians to come up and also fight for what we're fighting for. So when I saw the video, I was excited for the fact that in Nigeria today, people barely speak up because of intimidation or whatnot. But right now, we have people who are coming out to speak truth to power. So it made me happy. And honestly, I found no grouse at all with the languages she used, because she never insulted the president. She only said terrible president. She didn't say that Tinubu, you are a terrible human being. She didn't say that Tinubu, you are an idiot. She didn't use any of those languages.
Tinubu being the president, Yeah, but
Sorry, what?
Tinubu being the president, if she says you are a terrible president, that is a direct insult to who holds that power of office, that place of office. So if you say it's not an insult to him directly, how do you qualify that? Because she said, Tinubu, you are a terrible president. And most people will say that's an insult. So how do you mean that that's not necessarily an insult?
No, what she did was to talk about the responsibility of the president. When you
Okay.
cannot, an adjective is an adjective. You use it to describe something. When you describe the incapacity of someone who is holding a particular office and the person cannot execute what the person needs to execute, you can use an adjective to describe that person's inefficiency in that office. She didn't
All
insult
right.
Tinubu. In fact, a lot of people will tell you that she was very, very mild in her language. And also, I want to correct an impression that she is a core member does not exclude her from anything that pertains to Nigeria. She's a human being, number one, then she's a citizen of this country, and then she's covered within our constitution. And the last I remember, the constitution takes preponderance upon any other law or any bylaw or whatever it is that is an agreement or whatever it is that exists. So the constitution takes supreme upon any of these things. So I don't see what Rita did as being wrong. Some people might say, yes, she must have, she may have used a subtle language, but the question is this: when these people who are in authority are dealing with us, are they being subtle in their actions against us? Are they being subtle? So why is it that it's just like, Donald Trump said, I'm sorry to bring him into this conversation, when an armed robber, a hardened criminal, killed somebody, and then the police arrest the person, and then they want to put him in a vehicle, they'll be saying, watch your head, watch your head. This is somebody that's just murdered somebody. So we cannot live in a country where we have been brutalized in the worst way possible, and then when we want to now air our grievance, we will now start watching the languages that we use. This is not a military republic. I am sorry,
Yeah.
this is not, but that is what they are
Interesting. No,
turning it into.
definitely, we're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much for that interesting perspective, Jeff. Let me come to you now, Taufik. Of course, we've heard the different sides, but want to analyze the swift response and action. Like Jeff is pointing out to the fact that the way they have been treating us has not been easy. It's been brutal. So why should we give them back a brutal response to their policy? So now let's analyze the swift response and actions taken by the NYSC board against this core member, because as soon as the video gained traction online, and then comparing it to the way Nigerians have been treated in the past by authorities, especially when they speak out on the harsh realities that they face. For instance, we had a couple of protests last year, the End Bad Governance, and some women also in the north that came out to speak against the protest and the speak against the harsh realities that they're facing. They all got arrested. Some were, of course, brutalized. We don't even know if some have been, killed. We don't even have all the full information on everything that happened to those people. So now, Jeff was getting to that. I want to know, based on this reaction towards the core member, and looking at the way this administration has handled issues when it comes to citizens voicing out their opinions, voicing out their grievances on the policies that they are facing, on the issues that they are facing as regards the government policies. Do you think that we're slowly getting into the militarization of democracy? Because this is a democratic system that we're running. But Jeff was getting to that, but I want to hear your thoughts on that as well. Looking at the response that this core member was given, do you think that this administration is moving towards an authoritarian, way of leading?
Yeah, so I think your first speaker alluded to the point initially, which was to do with the legal side of things. So if she has sort of like fallen foul of the law in terms of her conduct being an NYC member, then that should be addressed, because we need order in our society anyway. But there is a more fundamental problem with the society at large, which is the fact that governments get into office to provide certain services to the people. And if they have not done that, then people are entitled to speak up, because after all, they elected them into offices for a particular purpose. And if they've not done that, then people have the right to speak up and to rebel against the government. But order is very important in a society. With regards to the use of the sort of like authority in terms of pushing back against people who speak against the government, that is something that needs to be decided in terms of what is required to maintain order within the society, because we don't want things to get out of hand. But the swift response is clearly selective in its approach, because you saw the way Showore was treated, and you see the way Nnamdi Kanu has been treated as well. And that is a completely different thing to members of governments who have been in the past, have embezzled money, and they seem to be rolling into the high court in their fancy cars, and nothing seems to be done to them. So that seems to be a double standard in terms of the way the law is being applied. But that is a more fundamental issue with regards to the entire society. But we must not deviate from the fact that we require order in the society in terms of how we look in the international community as well. So we must approach this with a balanced measure, and we must also stay within the bounds of the law in terms of how we pursue this issue. And this is where most of the legal professionals in the society come into play, whereby they can address these issues through the courts by coming behind this young lady and defending her in a way that shows that things still work within the society and there's still room for order in the society, as opposed to maybe taking to the streets or taking more extreme measures. That would be my position on that.
All right, thank you so much for that. So let me come back to you, Adedoyin. Our guests have alluded to the fact, for instance, Jeff was speaking about how, we cannot necessarily call her response brutal because the government have been treating us brutally. And so the way she responded to it is equal to the way we're being treated. So we cannot necessarily invalidate the way she's feeling. And now also we've had Taufik speak on the fact that the way they have responded to this girl's grievance is selective enforcement. Because, for instance, I saw a tweet online saying that when terrorists and some Yahoo people come outside, they don't know how to find them. They turn a blind eye. But a simple call member came out and was expressing her grievances, and immediately they found her number, and they're calling her. But when we see terrorists coming out and displaying all sorts of things, putting out their wealth, their weapon, the government does not know what to do. But now regular citizens come outside and they're, just all over the place sending threats. So now the question now based on that is that, can we say that this is the administration is necessarily, they're trying to dissent the voices of the people, and they're in some sense, like I said earlier, turning this democracy into militarization. It's more of an authoritarian form of leadership. They don't want to hear us. And so because of this, what the girl has done is actually equal to the way we're being treated. Do you agree with that position?
Well, not so completely. And I'll say this way. It's a pity that it seems as though I'm speaking as though holding brief for the government. Unfortunately not, because we're all facing the impact of the wrong implementation of good policies. I call them good policies, but badly implemented generally. But first of all, we cannot attribute the attitude of an LGI, local government inspector of NYSC, to the administration of the president. You cannot. The secretariat responded, they are all civil servants. Everybody in NYSC except the DG. It's probably an appointment. Everybody in NYSC are civil servants. So the question we should look at is this. Why are we suffering and smiling? The woman that called her, I attempted to call her myself actually, but the woman that called her is a civil servant. But because they are being overzealous. Can I tell you something? The Tinubu that we know, I don't know him in person, just to clear that. But I believe that the kind of personality Tinubu embodies, if you meet that lady, is going to sit down with her and understand what the plight is, not to condescend on her, number one. But that should not make us to forget what I would not have done if I were in her shoe. I've once been in her shoes. Time will not permit me to talk about my experience serving in Kano in the days of Boko Haram. I now means two bomb blasts, one straight bullet in Kano. DSS was sent after me without committing a crime. Yet we didn't bring the roof down. We will not look at Kano and say, this is a terrible city. Never. I would never say that. And it was never a terrible city. But look at a young lady saying, Lagos is dirty. Excuse me, that is some people's ancestral land. That's some people's hometown. You cannot just come online and say, oh, the city is dirty. No, those are wrong statements to use. Yes, there are issues on ground. I'm an environmentalist, by the way, so I should be excited. Somebody advocating for cleanliness and all that. But you can't put a wrong message and expect good results. You can't be punching somebody a blow and you expect them to argue. You understand? So I feel that there is a way to pass the message. The message for me is okay. And by the way, in terms of giving brutal response, my dear, the brutal response to give to somebody you have elected to be in power is by your votes next time. It's not by, yes, the government has been performing not so well. We are all facing the impact. And really, and by the way, you talk about militarization, I don't agree with it. Okay. Please, I'm not, it's really funny. I'm not holding breath for the government. I wish you can look at the flip side of these things so that I can talk about the areas of where the government is missing it. The government is missing it big time. No way to talk about it, to hide about that. I'm not sure CBN is out, understand the theory of what they are doing. No theory explain Nigeria economy as we speak. You can't use any theory of economy to explain what we are facing in Nigeria because almost all the right policies we know as economists has been put into force, but we're getting results opposite to what we're supposed to get. So I'm not holding breath for the government. But you can't talk about militarization. I've not heard that the military have arrested her. I've not heard that she's been arrested or what have you.
But
thanks to people like Showore.
Citizens that every time they come out to speak, they get arrested. I mean, look at what happened during the NSAS time.
Terrible. Terrible. No story about that. Terrible.
They brutalize people when they come out, and they have a right to freedom of speech. That's something we don't see in the military era. 1,000
times terrible. I'm only saying, let's look at this thing. Let's be very objective on this particular case. Do you understand? A lady should not come. And when we look at the social side of these things, we're only looking at the government side. You know, when we look at the social side of these things, there are lessons also for the lady. Do you understand? You don't start growing from the tree. Excuse me, there's no award for the person that suffers most in the world. Poverty is not a gold medal, all right? But as a core member, you're complaining about Uber. Egg is not a problem, I understand. Yes, eggs expensive and all that. But as a core member, you're talking about Uber. You're supposed to live within your means. My sincere sympathy.
So you're saying because she's a core member, she shouldn't have the right to enter Uber?
Oh, why not? So no, you can take a private jet. Excuse me. You can take a private jet, all right? If you can afford it, that's all right. But it shouldn't be a public issue to say you're complaining about. I mean,
but do you think this situation is the same for youths abroad that have their basic access? They will not say because you are a youth abroad, you know, you cannot enter a private car. Because the standard is lower when it comes to Nigeria.
Like I said, there is no gold medal for who suffer most. Yeah? Poverty is not a gold medal to be won. However, you live within your means. You cannot expect you to live at the level your father will live, for instance. You understand? And she said she's living this adult life for the first time and all of that. My sympathy about that. However, it is, I mean, things are hard, but I'm only looking at the nitty-gritty of it. She complain about egg, that's all right. But talking about Uber, I mean, excuse me, please. I served in Kano. I was working for the state government. Apart from my allowance, I'm not talking about 1924, I'm talking about 2014. Apart from my allowance, which was 18,000 naira from NYSC, the only money I was getting was 1,200 naira. Don't tell me, oh, maybe 1,200 naira I can buy a car that time. No. Now, as of that time, my transport daily to work, through a return trip, was 270 naira. And I still wanted to serve. You know what I did? I went to go and buy a bicycle. It was so bad that I could not post a picture online because my family must never see I was riding bicycle on the road. I was competing, right? Kano, Maiduguri way. I was competing with trailer. And with all of that, I survived beautifully. I served the state. The governor of Kano State today cannot see me and say he doesn't know me because we have interacted before when I was in Kano.
From all these things you're saying, I would say you're almost contradicting yourself because you said there's no award for poverty, but now you're glorifying...
I'm not. No. The message is simple. Okay. Live within your means. There are core members that could afford to go in JLK. There is nothing wrong about that. There are core members that they can afford even convoy. There's nothing wrong about that.
I wouldn't even say Uber is too much. I wouldn't say Uber is even too much.
It's relative. Take for instance, I can afford to take Uber to anywhere I want to go. I can afford to probably ride 2-3 cars if I want. Do you understand? But for instance, when I was serving as a core member, I cannot even afford a motorcycle. I can't now be complaining that Uber is wrong. No. You understand? Okay, by the way, When you're going to serve, there are many of our colleagues who came by flight. As of those years, I've never thought the tail of a plane in my life. Do you understand? Now I'll be complaining, they posted me to Kano, but cost of flight is very expensive. No, it's not my language as of that time because I don't operate at that level. So we don't start growing from the tree. There are what you call basic needs, please. She complained about food, fantastic. I mean, please, I have to emphasize this so that the government doesn't get things wrong as if someone is holding brief for them. The government is performing poorly. No story about that. However, when we're going to pass message to leadership, take for instance, I'm open and I'm happy when people confront people in leadership because whatever makes them our leader also makes them our servants. Tinubu is living on a borrowed right. He borrowed my right, he borrowed your right to become president. He has the same stake in Nigeria the same way I have. Now, you don't have somebody you employ and your servant, your housemaid and all of that, and then you send him to market to go and do something for you because that's what Tinubu is doing. And then he comes back from the market and you stand up to greet him. I really don't see much in president entry and then you're standing up and down. You understand? He's our servant. He's supposed to serve us. If he's not doing well, we let him know he's not doing well. But excuse me, we don't insult him. He's somebody's father.
Okay, now, like, based on that, for instance, Jeff was speaking about that, and she said, when she said he's a terrible president, she wasn't necessarily insulting him as a person, but he was speaking to the office of responsibility, and that in that office of responsibility, you are not doing well.
Very simple. Can I ask you, how about saying, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you are doing very poorly? That would have been very correct.
But we all know Tinubu is the president. So if you say Tinubu, you don't have to add president.
No,
when you
look
say
at
Tinubu,
the difference is
our
not,
mind goes to the president.
The difference I'm making is not the name. It's not the mention of the name. The president, you are performing poorly. That's performance evaluation, and you have the right. Because you employed him.
She said, Tinubu, you are a terrible president. She didn't say you are a terrible person.
Excuse me. Can you define what is the basis for being terrible? Whether he's talking about his personality, or his being, or his performance, we don't know. But
She said president.
President. But look at the word terrible. My emphasis on the word terrible, not the president. It's okay. You can call him anything you like. You understand? You can call him Jagaban if you want. Now, the word terrible, it's quite ambiguous. And when words are used ambiguously, you leave it to the hearers to attribute whatever meaning it means to them. What time you say terrible? I mean, if I say you are terrible now, whether it's your performance or the way you're interviewing me, or whether it's the way you look, we don't know. And whatever you think I said is what I said. You understand? What matters in conversation and spoken English, spoken grammar, is the understanding of the person hearing it, not what you said. So, it's quite ambiguous. How about say, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you are performing poorly. We'll clap for her. I will clap for her. Because she has the right to evaluate the president.
All right. Thank you so much for that interesting perspective. Let me come to Jeff. I don't know if you have any comments on that. Of course, Adedoyin has made some very strong points. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I am so happy that you are coming to me first, not to Mr. Taufik, because I almost jumped off my feet when when you were speaking.
Okay.
Whenever somebody began speaking and said, "I am not holding brief for this person," there is a conflict of interest somewhere. Take it or leave it. We are talking about individuals who. You can't push me and show me where to fall. You can't beat me and tell me how I should cry if my voice is too loud. You can't do that. That is exactly what the person you have in the studio is telling Rita to do. Rita was complaining about the economic hardship in the country. And then somebody is telling her that, no, you should have used a subtle language. Mind you, the language she used was, as I said before, was addressing the responsibility of the president, which I see nothing wrong in it. Let me say this. There are some points that I want to talk about. Number one is, the NYC has no business whatsoever what this lady did. They have no business. This lady is out of the orientation camp, number one. Secondly, she's talking about something that encompasses Nigeria as a whole. Then we have an NYC official who came to threaten her. And then I ask you a question. In 2023, we have about over 100 core members abducted somewhere in the north. It took them 1 year before they were released in 2024. If these NYC officials know how to issue threats, why did they not threaten the terrorists that kidnapped these people? Why did they not threaten them to get them released? They didn't do that. Secondly, we are talking about a smelling Lagos state. See, it is high time we begin to call a spade a spade. We should stop all this, sweet talking, certain things. It is high time. I have been to Lagos state. I came back from Lagos 2 months ago. I lived in Lagos, for some time. Lagos is smelling. Once you move beyond, once you are ascending from the Lekki Ikoyi bridge, and then you are coming to the mainland, from Oroshoki downwards, everywhere is smelling. You go to Akoka, the university opposite is smelling. You go to Lasu, opposite Lasu is smelling. So when a place is smelling, when somebody issue out something and say, look, that what I'm sensing here is bad governance, what you are supposed to do as the leader is to listen and say, how can I make it better? How can I make Lagos not to smell, not to begin to attack? Then thirdly, he was saying that it is not a military regime that we are in. Let me point out some facts to you. The first PRO, Muyiwa Adejobi, I hope I got the name right, on Twitter, which is now X, he issued out a statement saying that anyone from now henceforth that attack or insult, whatever insult, I don't know who will define what an insult is now, insult a political leader, that person will be arrested. We thought it was a joke. We started seeing people who make some dissenting comments being arrested and prosecuted. We saw it happened, right? So you cannot live in a society that has begun to move like this and you say, no, you are not in a military regime. We are actually in a heavy military regime. Now, I asked a question the other time. When will the NYSC scheme begin to pay the 70,000 naira minimum wage that they are supposed to pay to these coppers? Up to now, they are still paying them 33,000 naira. How much can 33,000 naira do for you? I am at my home right now. I returned from Lagos 2 months ago. When I went to Lagos, I was paying, when I buy a unit of 5,000, I get 84.2 units. Now, I buy 15,000 naira unit, I get 66.6 units. So in 6 days, I spent 15,000 naira, meaning that in a month, I spent over 60,000 naira. In a house that I regulate everything that regards light or usage of light as a whole. I am not talking about the amount I spend every day in fueling my car. So are you now saying that we should not demand for the bare minimum in terms of basic amenities in this country? So all of a sudden, having electricity, all of a sudden, getting food in the market that is within a certain range in prices are now luxury for us. We cannot be a society that considers these basic things as luxury. We cannot be a society like that. It is very wrong if we do that. Because, see, the time has gone where we now, I'm not saying you should you should start insulting anybody, no. But the time has gone when we will be so diplomatic, when we will be genuflecting before these people, whereas we know that they are eating us dry. The same president that is asking us to be patient, was he patient when he demanded a new jet to be purchased for him? Was he patient when he spent 21 billion naira for the vice president accommodation, a place that the previous vice president Osibanjo just left? Were they patient? Those in the House of Assembly and the Senate, were they patient? Just the other day, El Rufai's son was asking them, if we are asking to buy new things, is it that every year we buy new pen, every year we buy new table, but they keep budgeting for those things. So we are a people who have been subjugated, who have been subdued, and then they say we cannot talk. It is wrong. For some point in this conversation, I love the way we are going, because it seems that everyone is also tired of the inefficiency of governance of government in this country. But hearing the person you have in the studio speak in the manner for which he speak and continue to put a caveat that he's not holding brief for the government, absolutely, my heart pains me to hear that. Because if you live in this country, I am someone who, by God's grace, I have traveled outside of this country many times, and I have seen I have seen fantastic places. And this, we have leaders who also have traveled, who have seen fantastic places, fantastic innovations, fantastic infrastructure, but they cannot come replicate it. Go to Lagos Airport. If you are coming back from Lagos to Abuja or any other place, the waiting area, I don't even want to call it a lounge. The waiting area looks like it's self-contained. Go to Abuja Airport, the same thing. Now, these are airports that they say is an international airport that they just redid. So you ask yourself, I traveled sometime to Sri Lanka. When I landed at the airport, do you know what they wrote there? That this country has no malaria in it, meaning that they have dealt with it. But we cannot even say that. We are not the people that can say that. Do we not have money? We do have money. The other time, your president, my president, went to G20. What did he do in G20? He went there to beg them for money. He went there to, these are people who are seeing your accounts, who know all the money that you have hidden in various countries. They know how heavily rich you are. You went there, instead of to project the image of the country, you are begging them for arms. You are begging them to give you money when they know how heavy you are, how corrupt you guys are. It doesn't make sense. What did Erufai say the other day? This is to tell you that these people know themselves and no one should hold brief for them. Erufai recently decamped from APC to SDP. What did he say? That all the politicians that supported the president Tinubu, they knew of this university issue. They knew. But they all covered it. The same Erufai that was leaking this thing, was it not the same person dancing Ruga with the president during the campaign period? Was it not the same person? So why do we want to die in their war? Why can't we look these people in the face and tell them the truth? Why can't we say enough is enough? Why can't we say we want a better society, a nation where our children will be proud? Do you think that the Nigerians that are japaing to other countries that they want to japa, when they japa, do you know how they suffer there? There are friends that I have who have stayed in some of those countries for 10 years. They can't even boast of anything. But they are okay there because things work there. At least there is constant power supply. At least there's constant water supply. Things are working for them. If they are paying taxes, those taxes are being used to give them basic amenities. Since morning in my house, I have not seen electricity. This is inverter. This is inverter. If this inverter dies, I have a generator that I will on to charge my inverter. Why will I be living such kind of lifestyle? Why will I be living such kind of lifestyle? So please, is enough. Enough is enough. Let's tell ourselves the truth, because if we continue to hold brief directly or indirectly for these leaders, they will continue to exploit us. They will continue to make a mess of things, and at the end of the day, 60-something years later, we are still. We don't hold control of our electricity. We cannot say that Nigerians. Do you know how many children are out of school today? Do you know how many? I'm not just talking about the north, including the south. Do you know how many people that cannot feed themselves?
All right, Jeff, thank you so much. No, there's a lot to talk about, so we need to. Sorry to cut you off. You're making very strong points,
No, it's
but
okay.
there's a lot to talk about. Okay. Yeah. So let me come to Taufik now. Of course, now we're on the topic of the situation that people have been facing since Tinubu has come into presidency, and of course, since he assumed office in May 2023, he has embarked on some series of economic reforms, which they claim is aimed at stabilizing the nation's economy. Despite this current hardship that has been going on for some time now, based on what they have been projecting to us, do you believe that this could somehow bring us to the light at the end of the tunnel? Do you believe these reforms are truly intended for the long-term benefits of Nigerians? Is there something that we can truly hope for? I mean, that's what they call themselves, the renewed hope people. But let me have your thoughts on that.
Well, I think from what we've seen the Americans doing, it's all about waste, and it's all about good governance, because the previous government over there was running things in a way that wasn't efficient. And then the new governments come in, and then they found ways to eliminate waste within the system. I go back to my earlier point, Nigeria has a very fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is that we are listening to countries of the West and using those solutions and thinking those solutions are going to work in an underdeveloped economy like Nigeria's. And that's not going to happen. The implementation of the policies that the government has done isn't necessarily going to work, because the way you bring about economic prosperity is to increase productivity within the system. And Nigeria as a country has a very consumer focused economy. We tend to buy things, especially import things from abroad. And if you don't have a strong currency, then you're always going to introduce inflation into the system in a way that is not sustainable. And also, our dependence on oil solely is also a very fundamental problem with our entire system, especially given the fact that a lot of that money is being spent on big governance, which isn't actually being translated to the people. Um, your other guest there, the second speaker, mentioned that there were some infrastructural issues in the system, and that's part of the problem. The first speaker was talking about the lady who was talking about Uber and stuff and living within her means, but people in government aren't living within their means, that's for sure, because all they're doing is siphoning money, embezzling money,
Yeah.
and then they take that money out of the system and buy homes and properties abroad, and they buy luxury goods from abroad, boosting international economy, but the local economy is actually suffering. So if the idea is to continue consuming without actually producing things locally, then the economy is not going to improve by virtue of whatever policies they implement. Another issue that you have fundamentally with our system is that the private sector isn't really playing its due role within the system, because every single thing that the guests have mentioned in terms of the problems with the society could be places where in the West, the private sector actually plays a role. When it comes to most research facilities, they are funded by private sector money, and those money translate into productivity for the system, and then it leads to higher standard of living for people within the society. So the private sector in Nigeria is one that has to come in and take the role that the government is actually not feeling, because the government, most people who are trying to get into the government are only trying to get into the government for access to embezzle money, if we're going to make it plain. And that's part of the fundamental issue. So whatever policies they're implementing, if the policy isn't focused on increasing productivity locally within the system, and is focused on an outward looking economy whereby you're always importing goods into the system, you will import everything in. You will import the add-on costs, shipping costs.
Yeah.
It's like when you go to the supermarket and you buy potatoes, for example, or any foodstuff, about 60% of the cost of those products is actually spent on transportation. It's not spent on the actual product itself. So what you're paying for is actually to get those goods to where they are. So you can imagine if you're shipping them from anywhere around the world, you know who you're paying that money to. And that's the problem. So we must focus on the local economy, develop the local economy, stop, travel miles on products. And also, education is another key thing for our system as well, because if you don't have an educated system, you can't really develop the economy, because you need the skill set. Most of the Western countries actually depend on human capital to be able to develop their economy further. And that's what you need.
All right, thank you
To
so much,
develop.
Taufik. Yeah. All right. So before we take a pause on the conversation and go on the break, I just also want to hear your thoughts on that last question, as regards if there is hope at the end of the tunnel. Because Taufik made a very interesting statement, because he was alluding to the fact that you said that the copper should have lived within her means. But the question is, are the politicians living within their means? Because you see all the private jets that they're booking and the situation of the economy, and they're taking more from the economy than we are losing. So looking at the reforms that Tinubu has put in place, and the harsh realities that Nigerians are currently facing, which we can say is almost at the expense of the people in power, do you think that there is hope and there's truly a long-term benefit that can come from these reforms? Because you also said that CBN cannot even explain the economic theory of Nigeria. So I want to hear your stance on that before we take a break.
First of all, you're talking about end of the tunnel. That's if there's a tunnel at all. I'm not sure there's a tunnel anywhere in terms of the way things are going. But generally, we must acknowledge. I mean, but first of all, talking about the politicians, politicians are living very large. Of course, that's not how society should run, technically. But notwithstanding, also in career, forget about whether they are politicians or not, you understand? Except the ones you have caught and you established that it's a thief. You understand what kind of, but just being in politics does not make you a thief in the first instance. And there are many people who have been in business before they join politics. So, but except the ones who can establish that they are thieves. But generally speaking, I mean, before you rise up in any career, you also learn the ropes. Some of these people are people that didn't have slippers when they were in secondary school and things like that. So, but essentially, I still believe that the core member should live within our means. I am not forbidding that she could condemn, express her opinion, her views, and condemn the policies of the government. That's all right. Now, having said that, now, to be very fair and sincere with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, sincerely, I mean, I'm not holding brief for the government. I think he's a very brilliant man. We have his antecedents and all of that. Yes, there can be questions about where he was born and all those stories, but that wasn't entered the economic equation of the nation. But he's a very brilliant mind. And the policies he's taking, the individual policies are beautiful policies in the right direction. But the combination, how the policies were combined, was technically wrong. You don't float Naira and then deregulate the energy sector, I mean, what's it called, petroleum, at the same time. No. You put in a policy, you check what the impact is, and then you are providing. And also, how do you come May 29, the first day of inauguration, they've not even handled the fight to you to understand what the state of the economy. Subsidy is gone. That is wrong. In fact, somebody was talking, he said, that is, forget about policy itself, policy communication. Absolutely wrong. Right from when he made that statement, people were already fidgeting in all filling stations and all of that. So I believe that the policies in themselves, individually, please, are beautiful policies. I mean, I have a good background in economics and also in development issues. However, the combination was wrong. The communication was wrong. You understand? For instance, how do you just say subsidy is gone? What are the buffers? What are the provisions you have made? And more importantly, because they reduce, I mean, they took off away subsidy, though, actually, we should be asking questions whether the subsidy is gone or not. We don't even know, to be sincere. No, we don't know. Sure. At least, I mean, but let's assume it is gone. You understand? And state governments are getting, some of them are getting twofold, threefolds of what they used to take up. What are the governors doing with it? Where are the checks and balances? So if you were stopping subsidy just to get more benefit to the people, to get this money circulated, what are the mechanisms you have put in place to check the governors so that this money doesn't go just like our security votes? I'll leave it there.
All right, thank you so much, Adedoyin, for that perspective. We'll take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll look into another trending issue in the political space, and that is the ongoing River State crisis. So don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching Policy on the Go, coming to you from Gringo TV. Before we wrap up, let's delve a little bit into the most recent development in the Rivers political crisis, which escalated yesterday as we had lawmakers accuse Governor Siminalayi Fubara, that is the Rivers State Governor, and his Deputy Governor Ngozi Odu of gross misconduct, and we had other accusations like reckless spending, obstructing the State Assembly, and making appointments without proper screening and confirmation. And now we have impeachment proceedings against the governor on the way. So let me come to you, Jeff. What do you make of the recent development in the Rivers State? Do you think that this is the right path towards dousing the political tension in the state, looking at the fact that there's just been a lot going on from 2023 and now we're in 2025 and it's still here? So what do you make of this recent impeachment that has been put underway towards or against rather Siminalayi Fubara?
Thank you very much. I'm going to say a few words on this, and then I will make a suggestion to the sitting governor. And if he comes across this particular conversation, I hope that he's going to listen, and then so that he can save himself. Firstly, I think this is a war between a godfather versus godson. And the reason this war is happening is because the godson, in quote, has refused to adhere to the demands, the commands, and the order and instruction of the godfather. And that is why this war has raged on the way it has. What Wike is doing is to show the governor in power that he doesn't respect him, that he doesn't consider him as a legitimate leader in Rivers State, yeah. And he also has openly endorsed what I consider as an illegal impeachment plot. And it is time for Fubara to stop being calm, because his calmness has been looked as weakness. His restraint has been considered as surrender. His diplomacy has been understood by Wike as someone that cannot do anything. Recently, Wike came out and insulted the Ijaw culture, the Ijaw community, the Ijaw people, where the governor came from. That is a huge disrespect in itself, because Wike cannot say what he has said to his own Ikwere people. He cannot do that. What did Wike do recently also? Wike stormed Rivers State with armed security convoy that is fit for a war zone, military personnel, armored vehicle, even air support. Can you imagine that? In a state that there is a governor, a minister of the federal capital went there in that convoy, in that security, to a Thanksgiving service in Abalama, where the people rejected him to come to, where the people did not invite him, where the people dared to protest. And then what happened? The security apparatus that Wike has configured brutalized them. So I think, like I said before in the other issue, there's a point you have to sit back and don't allow yourself to be pushed close to the wall. Otherwise, you will be consumed. So what do I think Fubara needs to do? First and foremost, one thing is that he should file a civil case against Wike as a matter of immediate, because Wike has interfered in the governance of the state. He has forcefully brought military personnel to intimidate the people of the state. Even if the judiciary is compromised in court, let it be documented in records that there is a legal action on this particular case. Secondly, I also think that it is high time that Fubara looks beyond the shores of this country. He should take this case to ECOWAS. He should go to the African Union. He should also go to the United Nations. Nigeria is among the international community that claim to promote democracy. So if there is a federal minister somewhere that is trying to usurp the power of the governor, that is trying to remove an elected governor, I think the world should know about it. Then fourthly, I also believe that he should look beyond the media, because if you look now, it looks like Wike has captured the Nigerian media. Look at the way he addressed the media in the media chat he had the other day. He was talking to them like children. So I think it is time for Fubara to also, move beyond the shores of this country, reach out to CNN, to Fox News, to New York Times, all of these other media. Let them know what is going on in the country. And also, let him tell the president that this is not his war. Because Wike could only do what he did in Rivers State and what he's doing in Rivers State because there is a power somewhere that is backing him. So he should let Tinubu know that this is not his war. And if he does all of this expand this beyond the shores of Nigeria. Tinubu is a very strategic individual, so he really will not want someone who is a liability to him. The moment he begins to see that the international community are setting in, that Wike is becoming a liability to him, he's going to let Wike go. And the people of River State will enjoy good governance for him. Because in this battle, one thing that they forget is that there are people, which is the people of River State, that are not getting the governance that they're supposed to get. In the media chat, they asked Wike, are you considering the people of River State? He said that they are the reason he's doing this. But they are not the reason he's doing this. Wike said, and I hope I'm quoting him correctly, he said that he's not going to impose anyone on the people of River State, but he imposed Fubara on them. He is the one that campaigned for Fubara 2 years ago. He imposed Fubara on them. And he also said that when his administration comes and goes, and he's going to leave, he's not going to spare the affairs of the state. But he's doing that. The same man that said that, what was it again he said about that? He was talking about APC and the fact that Tinubu said that he's going to continue the good job of Buhari. And then he was saying, what is the good job of Buhari? Hunger, poverty, insecurity. And at the same time, this is the man that is now working with the same people he condemned. So that is why I always go back to what Dele Farotimi said. We should not die in their war. But these advices that I have given to Fubara, I believe that that is the right way to go, so that Wike can be stopped, both nationally and internationally. I rest my case.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff. Let me also hear your final thoughts on that, Taufik, as regard this recent impeachment proceedings that are underway in the Rivers State Assembly. So let me just hear your thoughts on this new development.
I just think Nigeria is a society that is what we call a cappuccino society, whereby there's a select few right at the top who control things. And it is the aspect of people within the judiciary and within the military, for example, are the ones who are meant to bring about order. They are meant to be independent bodies. And that is one way that we can get a solution to finding some sort of order within the society. So the people who are within the judiciary don't have to do the bidding of Wike, for example. And they can stand up to him and create some form of order within the society. And I think that's one way to go. And the people in the military who are part of probably these armed gangs that is pushing about can stand up to him and not be a part of the process. And that's the way we're going to start this unraveling of this situation within the country, whereby everything appears to be upside down, essentially. And that's my position on it.
All right, thank you so much, Taufik. And so let me come to you now as we wrap up. Like the guests have alluded, one of the major issues that's at the deep heart of this crisis is the issue of godfatherism. Because when you look at it, Wike is still pulling the strings on a lot of things going on in Rivers State. So I want to hear your thoughts on this issue of the fact that even elected leaders still lack true autonomy after they've been elected, especially in the political space in Nigeria. How much do you think this has affected our development in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole, especially politically, socially, and economically? So this particular issue of godfatherism that we can see playing out within Wike and Fubara, I want to hear your thoughts on that, on how much it has affected our development and what needs to be done about it. How can we move forward?
All right, thank you so much. So one, Fubara is in what I would call a good problem. It's a problem. It's like a wife having problem with the mother-in-law. It's a good problem because you really can win. Go and do your studies. You really can win such battles. Now here it is. First of all, godfatherism is condemnable, it's terrible, and all of that. It's not something we should have. It's not ideal, particularly the way we practice it in Nigeria. For instance, I mean, all of us have godfathers, by the way. You have spiritual leaders, you have social leaders, you have people that are benefactors to you. But because we have not called it godfatherism because they have not been dictating the pace and your life. You understand? So godfatherism exists everywhere. Only that in political space and the way we have seen it, the way it has been construed in the Nigerian political space, then it's terrible. Now, having said that, so it's condemnable, it's not something to be encouraged and all of that. I need to be clear about that. But secondly, you see, integrity, like Wiki will call it, integrity. It's important to have integrity. And I'll say integrity falls on all sides. You can't say, I mean, that's good. Very good idea when you get a government, you're after the people, you know, the state put it like Fubara used to say, the rivers people must improve first. River people must improve. That's important. That's correct. However, somehow this man doesn't seem to be someone that could have won a local government councillorship election on his own. Now, the thing is this. I'm not saying we should side. I'm not in any way siding Wiki, by the way. So that to be clear, whatever Wiki is doing, that we can see all the handwriting on the wall, is terrible. I'm not in any way supporting it. But let's also go into the integrity of this issue. It's not a problem it should have come into the first instance. Now, I'll take you back to Ambode in Lagos. Ambode did so well in Lagos, possibly since 1990 date, possibly is the best governor. Everybody acknowledge him. But excuse me, sir, you will not go to Ohadiwa, or Amediwa, or what's it called, Oshun Sango, to go and collect a child. And then you bring it to church, come and do Thanksgiving. That would be fraud. Now, Ambode, whatever Tinubu is, either a good man, bad man, I don't know him, good man, bad man, evil man, thief, or whatever you call him, he worked with him. He knows him. And then you allowed him to use his political architecture, his finance to sponsor you. And you expect that to be Father Christmas, right? No. So whatever Tinubu was and he had already known. So you can anticipate, you can predict the tendencies. And then you now go there, you want to say, because of the people, because of the people. That would be wrong. You will enter into a big problem. And that's why since 1998, he's the only one-time governor in Lagos State. Come to Rivers. Rarely do you find anyone who has confronted the person that raised him to be there, that supported him to be there. You understand? And they survived it. The only person in the recent time that managed to survive only for a time is this former Edo governor. What's his name? I've forgotten. Godwin Obaseki. You understand? So come to Rivers. This man was never a politician. You know Wiki. You know all his tendencies. I'll give you an instance. When I finished my master's, I was looking for a job. Somebody very high up in government, a former governor, later became governor and all of that, and minister and all of that, requested for my CV to get me a job in the university. I was looking for lecturing job precisely. And I was called that XYZ requested for my CV. I traveled home and I didn't go with my CV, and I went to go and tell them, you can never get me a job and I will take it. Listen to me. I was taking 40,000 naira salary with a distinction graded master's in this Nigeria at that time. I'm talking about 1944, recent years. The reason is this: I anticipated that if they put me on this job, one day I'll become the dean of the faculty. One day I'll become the vice chancellor, most likely. And then they will bring that terrible list called VC's list, alumni list, and governor's list, and whatever stupid list, which my integrity will not allow me to support because I'll be cheating the system. Therefore, I would rather not take their help, rather take their help and now hurt them. I will never do that. So integrity matters. Fubara knew Wiki, knows all his tendencies, and you allowed him to sponsor, quote and unquote, you. It's a bit, you should expect this kind of problem. Unfortunately, you will have to face the music. It's not a good thing. I don't support what Wiki is doing, but there are problems you don't have to be governor. I don't have to be governor. I don't have to be president. If the pathway I'll pass to get there is terrible, and I can, you see, let me tell you, if you're a thief and I allow you to sponsor me, and I know you're a thief, and you sponsor me with the money you make from robbery, whatever I become in life, I will use to support you, expand your robbery business. That's my nature. Okay? Now, I will not take your money and then come back and hurt you. I will never do that. So, since I know I will never support robbery, even if I'm dying, I will never take your water. That's how it works.
All right, thank you so much, Adedoyin, for that very interesting perspectives. And to all our guests, unfortunately, we have to end the program now because, you know, it's been taking a lot more time than we expected, but it's been a very wonderful conversation. We just might have a part two, so, you know, watch out. But, you know, as we wrap up the program, it's like, here we go again. We have another Nigerian citizen that has spoken up, and instead of addressing the concerns, the system responds with threats. And if an NYSC core member like this can't even express her frustration over the cost of living without backlash, what does that say about free speech in this so-called democracy that we claim to run? The bigger questions that we should be asking is that if this government is so confident in their policies, why does it seem more interested in silencing criticism than actually proving that the reforms are working? Because at the end of the day, the true test of leadership isn't just in making policies, but it's in how the government is able to respond when these policies are questioned. Because if every criticism is treated as an attack, then maybe what we have isn't leadership, but it's control. So one thing is clear though, Nigerians will continue to speak out whether the government likes it or not. The real question is, will they ever start listening? I'll have you all and leave you all to think on that. That's it for today's episode on Policy on the Go. Many thanks for watching. I'm Tony Ogubanjo. It's bye for now.